Hey guys, this is our Snowball Sled. So this is our physical prototype, finished up for the final delivery. Um, so I'm gonna walk you through on how it works and what it is. So it's a sled that you're gonna push around in the snow, and it has these snowball molds built into it. So you push this around in the snow with your friends, and you collect as much snow as you can into this base here. And once you have it filled with snow, you're gonna close these doors and push on the molds. And when you lift these doors back up, you'll have 8 perfect snowballs that you can pick up and throw around with your friends. So moving into some of the construction of it, these molds were 3D printed using PLA filament, and they were printed face down. One by one to make sure that the structure could hold. These will typically be or should be screwed in for the final. We had glued it and it doesn't stay very well, so the final should have screw holes, and that should be screwed directly into the wood on each of the doors.
All right, guys, so I'm just gonna go top down and give you the rundown of the details of how this thing was really built. You'll find all these parts in our parts list, but I'll start off with the handle. This was just conduit piping, metal piping that we cut out and then used this bending tool, and we attached it with 2 bolts on either sides of this frame that was made by 2x4s just being wood glued and screwed together at all of the corners, which is what everything is built around. So on top of this, the main mechanism that the press is made out of, this is just made out of some simple plywood that we put in through the CNC router to cut out these organized holes. That also just gets screwed onto these 2x4s. I'll talk about that more a little bit later, but then below this we have 2 metal rails that run lengthwise of this thing to hold these ski mounts, and then on the bottom we have these skis that were glued and screwed into these mounts. And these skis are just, I believe, 3/8 wood that we soaked in buckets overnight and clamped them into these molds that we made out of some 2x4s and let them dry over the weekend, and they just came out exactly like this.
Okay, guys, with that being said, now that you guys know all about our prototype, we'll kind of go into the details of how we made each thing with pictures here. So, first off, let's just talk about materials. So, we have this perforated board that all of the molds sit in. This is 3/8 thick plywood. We have all the SKU numbers for Menards, which is where we shopped for all these things. We have a 2x4 frame. We have some steel metal mounting rails. We have some hinges that we found. We don't have the SKU for those, but those hinges weren't very great anyway. So then we have the ski mounts, which were made just by 2x4s, like we said, and then skis out of 3/4 thick plywood, and just a metal handle out of the conduit piping. So yeah, just look up all those SKUs at Menards if you have any questions or concerns. So as far as making the skis, this is a picture of us soaking the pieces of wood in a bucket overnight, and then we basically made these little molds out of 2x4s by just cutting a curve through the 2x4, and then after these pieces of plywood soaked in the water for overnight, we just put them in this mold with clamps and let them dry over the weekend. It was 3 days. Took them out of the molds, and they were just stuck just like that, how they are in the mold. So for bending the conduit piping to have this little lawnmower style handle, luckily our wood shop slash metal shop has this little apparatus to bend the metal. You can use this, but you can also use just a dedicated conduit piping bender, which would probably be a lot easier and more accurate, but either one works. And we just hammered down the ends of this pipe so that we could bolt it to the frame. Pretty self-explanatory.
Okay, yeah. So the one of the other pieces we had to do was the 3D printed snowball molds. So I mean, we had to test these to make sure that they would come out right. So I mean, they worked pretty well. Like we had kind of mentioned earlier, they make oval shaped snowballs slightly. It's not too bad. They packed nicely. It worked pretty well. And again, these are just 3D printed with the opening facing down on a with PLA um, filament. And I'll be sending the Prusa slicer file along with this so you guys can see what we had done and what I had modeled to do this. So yeah, these came out pretty well, and you can see that it packs them nicely.
All right, guys. So now that we've given you a great explanation of how we made our prototype, all the processes, we're going to talk about with our render what we would have done if we built this again. So this is how it would look if we could do it again. Everything would be simplified on the top of the frame. Everything would be level with the frame. See how there's no gaps and weird things sticking out of the frame? That ideally is how this thing would look. It would be a lot easier to pack snow on this thing if all of the molds are just level, and it would just be a lot better. So here's a little close-up showing kind of what that would look like. And on to the next thing we would add. Kosti and I discussed adding handles so that when you fold the presses down to pack the snow, you have something to press down on, and you're not just pressing down on the whole apparatus. Designated handles would be a lot more convenient and even more effective. The final thing that we talked about is adding some sort of shovel, maybe even 2 shovels. If there was some sort of like clips on the metal handle or the side of the frame or something like that, where you could have a couple small shovels, that would make it a lot easier for the kids to just run up, grab the shovel, start shoveling snow on that thing to make as many snowballs as possible, as opposed to just grabbing snow with your hands and putting it on the machine, which kind of defeats the purpose of the machine. It would make snowball making probably more inconvenient than normal. So adding shovels, I think, is pretty crucial to making this thing awesome. Also, the final thing, our prototype is pretty bare bones. I mean, it's functionally great, but it could use a makeover. So if this thing was painted or decorated with like snowflakes or flames or something cool, like war paint or something funny like that, I think it could be a lot more appealing for young children. With that being said, we wish you guys the best of luck, and we hope we did a good job at explaining all of our design choices and our prototype and stuff. Thank you very much, guys. We appreciate it.